City of Vancouver says it cost taxpayers $1 million to manage the Occupy Vancouver camp when it was up. The occupiers say, hey, we're actually providing services down there. How about the value of the services they were providing? Maybe taxpayers came out ahead on this deal. Think about that. Listen to this. This is a clip of one of the protesters, Eric Hamilton Smith.
The idea that we somehow cost the taxpayers $1 million, just the tangible benefits total nearly $1 million, and that's between the housing, the food, and the medic services. In addition, the real value, as I said, millions of dollars in addition to that in value in terms of education, political engagement, socialization.
Okay, we got to think outside the box here. Sarah Bueller is here. She's a spokesperson for Occupy Vancouver. Hi, Sarah.
Hi, I'm having me on this morning.
All right, thank you for doing this. Now, you got to break this down for me. You're saying what? We actually made a profit on this thing, the city?
I don't know if I'd go so far as to say a profit. The city came out pretty even. I'm a taxpayer here, just to get that out there. A lot of occupiers are taxpayers in Vancouver. But so let's talk about medical services. So any community needs medical services. We have them in BC. Socialized medicine. So Crossroads Clinic Vancouver charges about $180 per visit if you don't have MSP, and same cost to taxpayers themselves when visits are covered. We had about 100 visits per day, steady for 37 days. We had people from nearby offices. We had people homeless from the downtown east side. We had a lot of people coming through looking for help. So that totals about $667,000 worth of benefits that we saved the BC Healthcare.
Okay, so you're saying that the Occupy Vancouver camp distributed $670,000 worth of health care?
Yes, sir.
Wow. I didn't know you guys were a MASH unit down there. How many surgeries were you performing?
Well, it felt like that at some point. Let me say.
What kind of health care were you providing?
So we had volunteer doctors. Yeah, we had volunteer doctors, registered nurses. We had medics, people experienced in emergency medicine. They treated colds, cuts, scrapes, serious infections, pneumonia. As everyone is aware, we revived one man from a drug overdose. We had some heroic actions that day. And, tragically, we lost a member of our community to the same problem, which was drug overdose.
Yeah, we had a death down there. How much did that cost the taxpayers?
I don't have that information.
Well, I know you probably don't. Well, you're saying $670,000 to take care of colds, cuts, and scrapes?
Infections, pneumonia, reviving people from drug overdoses, yeah.
Oh, boy. Now, I got a note here. Yeah, I'm not sure I buy it. You know what? I got a note here. It says you have a real job in the real life, right? What's your real job?
I'm a development manager at a nonprofit.
Okay, because I was going to say, I'm sure you're not an accountant. Because if you're trying to tell me we made a profit on this thing...
Hey, the math's pretty easy.
Oh, really?
180 times 100 per day for 37 days, $667,000.
I don't know about that. Okay, where does the rest of the so-called services come from that the taxpayer should be happy about?
Sure, all right. So we had a restaurant on site, essentially. Food Not Bombs served free vegan and vegetarian meals out of a tent every single day. Conservative estimates are 1,000 meals per day. So over 37 days, we've got 37,000 meals for an estimated $130,000.
How does that save taxpayers money if you guys are passing out free meals?
Absolutely. Well, there's a lot of food subsidized by the government in the downtown east side. So these are meals that would have had to be provided elsewhere that were provided for free.
So you're saying all these free meals you gave away, these are people that would have went and got a free meal somewhere else?
Not all of them.
Taxpayers would have paid for.
Not all of them, but quite a few.
Oh, boy. What about the opportunity? See, I actually think this thing cost the taxpayers of Vancouver more than $1 million. I think they might be lowballing the figure here. Because you got to factor in things like, if we're going to get creative in our accounting, like you're doing here, what about the opportunity cost? Well, what about the opportunity cost of all those cops who were tied up down there and all those firefighters? They could have been out doing real work.
Well, exactly. So who asked them to come down? Who asked for $30,000 worth of closed-circuit surveillance equipment to be installed? Not us. We didn't need cops there. We weren't drunk.
Yeah, people.
We weren't rioting.
Died there.
Some somebody died there who was dealing who was involved with drugs. 2 blocks away in the downtown east side, 140 people a year die of drug overdoses. No one reports on that. Nobody cares.
Where is this
happens in Occupy Vancouver? All of a sudden we got wall-to-wall firefighters and medical personnel? Well, interesting.
I guess at the end of the day, if you're telling me, Sarah, that we actually came out ahead on the deal on this thing, that we could solve the whole financial crisis if we just put you guys in charge. We could have tent cities and occupies all over the place, and we'd actually make money on the deal.
Or, what we could do is not overreact when peaceful protesters who are concerned about the economy melting down and the environment melting down, when, the problem is really young thugs fueled by alcohol, upset by hockey games. I mean, when you think about it, what has more benefit to society?
Well, hey, what do you mean overreact? I mean, you guys were allowed to have your camp for like 5 weeks. How is that overreaction?
Well, I tell you, the police presence was out of control. The first day there was a SWAT team standing by, which cost the city about $70,000. Policing overtime costs were about $600,000 of that total bill you're talking. So there's a lot of VPD cops who had some pretty good overtime checks. What did they do? I was there every day. They did nothing. They walked around. They, said hello a lot. They were friendly. They were great, but they weren't necessary. So we had the choice to send people out. We
had a young woman die down there. There were people who were assaulted down there. I spoke to people who went down there, just peaceful reporters who went down there and got assaulted and roughed up.
And
that's why the cops had to be there.
Well, it's interesting because 911 works on the grounds of the Vancouver Art Gallery as well as it does everywhere else in Vancouver. So until we had that unfortunate incident where Ashley, for whatever reasons, she'd been there for 2 days, decided to do drugs, it's her business, went really wrong. But until then, we've had 0 911 calls for the encampment, and the fire chief told us that personally.
Well, speaking of the fire chief, I mean, I think the fire department did a really good job down there. One of the things that they told you guys was the camp was a fire hazard.
Oh yeah, they kept telling us that. I mean, you can see that tactic across North America because it's not cool to say your free speech rights are annoying. Dealing with political expression is annoying. So what we're going to do is talk about fire safety. We're going to talk about space between tents. We're going to talk about, tarps. Honestly, the amount of time we spent on tarps.
Sarah, if we had all those tarps and all those wooden pallets and tents close together, you guys had those propane tanks down there at the beginning. That was a recipe for a possible disaster. Have you ever seen?
Well, that was actually really
fire.
That was actually misreporting. What that was 2 people who have been on the streets for 3 years. Every single one of their possessions was at that camp, and they had 2 propane canisters that were not full. That turned into somehow the camp is full of propane, let's all freak out. So there's a lot of overreaction going on pretty much constantly.
We're lucky only 1 person died. Let me ask you this.
Interesting perspective.
Do you think that there's any irony in the fact that taxpayers got burned on this thing, speaking of burning, for $1 million, and who's going to pay for that tab? It's the 99%, the people that you claim to represent. It's the 99% that have got to pay $1 million for your 5-week-long party. Isn't that kind of ironic at the end of the day?
No, Mike, I think that's a mischaracterization. There was no party down there. What there was a lot of people talking about why we waste billions in corporate welfare when people can't even afford housing in Vancouver, when food prices are going through the roof, when people are worried because they're 2 paychecks from being on the street themselves. That's ironic.
All right, Sarah.
People care so much about that.
Thank you for coming on.
Thanks, Mike.
Sarah Bueller, who's a member of the Communications Committee.